Hello and welcome to today's panel discussion. Will the changing supply chains boost the introduction of new smart factory technologies? Now, a lot of companies are moving manufacturing out of China. They're shortening the supply chain, but are they taking this opportunity to make the new factories smart? Here to discuss this with me today is a distinguished panel. To my far right, we have Dave Trail from Critical Manufacturing Technologies. To his left, we have Jay Gorajia from Siemens, Mentor. To his left, we have Joel Scutchfield from Co-Young. And of course, to my immediate right, we have Michael Ford from Aegis Corporation. So welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for joining me this morning. So let's get right in there and ask the very first question. Are companies using the relocation as an opportunity to upgrade their systems? Let's start on the end with you, Dave.
I guess to a certain degree, we can expect some of that. Although companies have been moving out of China for several years now already, moving into places like Vietnam and India, and in some instances, they are just picking up the existing assembly line, shipping it over and setting it up as it is. And in other instances, sure, they are upgrading to new smart technologies and upgrading their systems.
Right.
My personal opinion is, I don't know if that's going to be the main driver for acceptance of smart manufacturing within our industry. I think a lot of that will have to do with the younger generation of engineers coming in. We're noticing that millennials are now holding positions of management within organizations, some of them anyway, and Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, advanced analytics, those aren't, I wish I could have, those are mandatory in their world.
Right.
So I think we're going to see a lot of that as well.
Okay. The interesting thing you said there is you've noticed that the manufacturing leaving China for a number of years. So you're saying that pre the trade war that we're going through at the moment, before the trade war, you were actually seeing the
especially in Vietnam, a lot of telecommunications,
right.
Cell phone production, et cetera, has already been
right.
moving.
Okay. Jay, what are you seeing out there? Are you seeing companies starting to use this opportunity, or is it still too early?
So I actually agree with Dave in terms of there's two motions that are happening right now. I think one of the motions is a lot of younger generation coming in trying to do things differently because they themselves never grew up having to do the things that we've had people in the industry for 20, 30 years doing day in and day out. They have to jump in, learn right away. But with the current climate, I would honestly say we would love to see an uptick in having smart manufacturing technologies work their way into more companies. But right now, I think most companies are just a little bit concerned about what this is really going to cost them.
Right.
And I don't mean the cost of manufacturing with smart technologies. I mean, okay, what is this, let's say, trade war going to mean for us? What do we need to do with the supply chain? Am I going to be able to do the fundamentals?
Right.
And that's what they're concerned with. And that hedging and that cost, I think, is holding them back from making a lot of large investments.
So you think the intent is there, but they're basically holding back because of the political environment at the moment to see in case there's any risk coming down the pipe?
Correct. I think they're going to wait and see, where the dust settles,
right.
And then see where to make those investments. I think the intent is there. I think they will do it. I think it's not an if, but a when. But I'm not sure now is the right time.
Right. Joel, you work mostly in the United States, of course, but you're part of a global Korean-based company. What are you seeing?
Actually, what I'm seeing is it's really more people-related, right? It's companies that are having a hard time finding people, keeping people, and irrespective of location, that can do the things that need to be done. And I think some of that speaks to what we talked about earlier, or what was mentioned earlier with regards to new people coming in. Are they coming in at the rate they need to be coming in? Until they come in and are able to adapt these new ways and new thinking that we're trying to apply here, we have to make do with what we have. And that's really pushing us to accelerate development for minimizing the need for those people in those specific positions that manage the process flow up and down the line. So the whole interconnectivity initiative seems to be heightened. We're working with several customers that are really pushing us hard to increase and accelerate the development for those types of initiatives and activities. Right. And I'm talking about even full control of things like the print process, hands off, right? We see anomalies, we adjust, we re-inspect, that kind of situation. So there's no doubt that in certain parts of the world it's certainly more challenging than others, but that seems to be the theme. It's how do we work through this until we can get that next generation on board, right. And of course, laying the foundation with what we're doing for them to step in and take over.
So Michael, I mean, two things that are coming out of what the guys have said so far is the drivers of it seem to be, one, possibly automation, because of the difficulty getting hold of the right talent, and two, millennials, actually, who are they've grown up with around computerization. They're much more dexterous. They're looking to use these modern tools. What is your view?
Yeah, it is about people, absolutely. When manufacturing was going remotely, it was carbon copy of whatever production line exists, and then you train the people up. And guess what? They had loads of people to throw at the problem. Coming back, it's kind of like going back in that you would expect to have the skills there from before, but no, they're not there. So how do you approach it? Is it like a greenfield site? Is it a high-risk startup, even though it's coming back to where it came from? And this is where you really need to start to look at technology, because the technology inside machines, for example, replaces the need for a lot of very specialist skills and knowledge and experience. Nowadays, you simply turn on the machine, boot up the software, and it's working at a much higher level. So as you say, you've got a lot of people now who are familiar with software and the value that it brings. The reticence, I guess, is, do we invest in all of these added smart features? Do we buy some kind of software to run our factory with the anticipation that we'll need less kind of focused skills, and we can use a more broad range of people who can do, be more flexible in what they do? It then comes down to a business decision. Am I going to see these troubles or issues around the world as being a problem that's going to affect my business, or do I see it as being an opportunity? And clearly, if a factory is prepared with the right set of skills and machines and know-hows that it can approach any kind of problem that comes along, they are the ones that will seize the opportunity as it comes along. So it's a difference between, are you ahead of the game in a very positive way, or are you just got your head in the sand and wondering what's going to happen, and we'll deal with the problem when it comes? Because I know who's going to be successful out of those two groups.
Right. Yeah. But you often hear people saying the first adopters are the ones with the arrows in their back.
Well, this is it. You need to avoid the arrows, but grab the land.
So Dave, coming back to you, one of the most common ways that people tend to approach the smart factory experience is by addressing pain points. What in your experience are the pain points typically that people are addressing first?
Well, I think when we're talking about pain points, we also have to address industry as well, because different industries see requirements slightly differently. Aerospace, medical, automotive, etc. Smart manufacturing or smart manufacturing isn't a great thing to have. Oh, I wish I could have that. It's mandatory as a way to manage recalls, to conform to standards and certifications, etc. It's something that they have to do. And some of the pain points within those industries are traceability, are quality control, managing recalls, and also over the last few years or so, I see analytics, big data analytics, artificial intelligence really driving some of these smart manufacturing decisions, basically from the bottom up, as opposed to looking at it as a secondary outcome. They look for the outcome first, and they want to get access to this data and implementing a MES system or a smart manufacturing
So is that something that's been driven by their customers, basically asking for more traceability?
traceability and also the analytics so that the company can identify areas where they can improve their processes, perhaps save some money, increase efficiencies, et cetera.
Right, okay. So Jay, when it comes down to a line level, I mean, people are looking at typical pain points like the printers and the inspection systems and that sort of thing, or the supply chain of materials going to the line. What in your experience are people looking at within the factory?
Yeah, pain points point of view, and especially in light of the supply chain potential chaos, I think there's 3 areas. One Joel hit on really nicely, which is augmenting training and readiness of operators, of people, of capabilities within a factory. Right. I think that's huge. I think it's every organization, if they aren't thinking about how to do this today, should be thinking about it. So that's one pain point I believe everyone's kind of looking into. The second one is how to hedge risk on the supply chain. So one of the pain points there refers to where are my suppliers getting their supplies from. Right. This supply chain has consequences now. You know, if it originates in a country that has affected tariffs or it has affected limitations and constraints, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's weather related, whether it's many different things, hazard materials, all that, it matters now. Right. Where it never mattered before.
Absolutely.
Before it was, just order more of these parts, we're good. This is your lead time, let's go.
You've got to take a much more holistic view at everything.
Right, exactly. So I think that's the second one that at least those companies and organizations that could invest in understanding that and want that visibility, they're going to hope to do that. Yeah. And the third one is in the pure automation point of view, optimizing the way they do things today. So again, everyone's kind of touched on this point, but to be more efficient within the factory, to understand what's really happening and let the analytics make decisions for you in order to get a better outcome, will help hedge those risks in a financial perspective, because those are margin points, right? And augmenting efficiencies and optimizing the factory to add those margin points to allow you to hedge for that risk, I think is a big theme. So those are the 3, I think.
Yeah, and it's still an education process. I think manufacturers are still not really taking that on board yet, or
I would
learned
agree.
that. Yeah, but there you go.
For sure.
Joel, I guess from your point of view, you're looking very much at line solutions, how the machines interact, the data that comes off them, because you're a very data-driven company, and the traceability. I'm guessing that's the pain points that most people come to you, but tell me.
It's certainly traceability. It's also yield. It's reducing cost. Basically what our customers are looking for is a solution that provides them with the maximum amount of capability with the least amount of human intervention, right? Drive down programming time, increase yield, use the data to do both, right? Make sure we have no escapes, we have no field returns, putting everything in place to ensure that everything is being done to maximize the output of what we're providing to them, right? So certainly the data drives that to a very significant level, and the tools that we're creating are designed to basically help the customers access and use the data very quickly and efficiently. I mean, that's the key. You can't just provide mounds of information that takes weeks to sift through to find an actionable, assignable.
It's turning that data
cure,
into
right?
something you can use.
So it's very much about data, but it's also using that data to fire the AI engines that Dave brought up, which is also a big part of what we're doing and where we made a huge investment to, again, make the systems more intuitive, make them, again, less reliable on people, right? Self-adjusting, self-healing, that kind of thing. But it is all based on the data, right? And it's got to be the right kind of data going in to the AI engine to get the output that we're looking for, right?
Okay, thanks. Michael, Jay talked on some of the wider areas out there that people are considering for the supply chain? In other words, where your suppliers bringing components in. Do manufacturers have to look at going beyond their own factory and being able to have a view into their suppliers' factory to make sure that if they get a sudden demand on a product, they order in certain devices and components, that they can see that these components, where they are in the manufacturing chain, that they're going to arrive on time and it's not going to impact on their manufacturing. These types of threats.
Yeah, I think the real pain point for manufacturing, dare I say it, is the customer. Because manufacturing now is much closer to the customer than ever before. And what that means is that, for example, in automotive, if we want to go ahead and buy a new car, there is a huge list of options on there, and we will simply choose what we would like or what we can afford perhaps, and we submit that order to the car company. Now the car company, OEM company, very savvy about having mixed production. You've got a car, many cars on the line, all different shapes, sizes and colors, all on the same line. But then you start to break that down into how that affects the suppliers to that line. Because there will be supplies of materials, there'll be sub-assemblies, there will be even finished products from a different factory. How much effort went into the optimization of that? Probably none. They were informed, this is the way we're going to do the manufacturing, and you will fall in line with that schedule.
Right.
And so our final production line is going to run really smooth, really nice, no wasted time at all. But you guys are going to pick up the brunt of that. You're going to pay for that effectively. So what these guys who are making these sub-assemblies need to do is to be able to be efficient no matter how the orders for particular options rises or falls with that changing demand. I mean, cars is just one example, but I think a lot of people are seeing now this immediate requirement from the customer, make this quantity, I want it now, I want perfect quality, and you've got to go find the materials, and everybody's running around looking for them. Right. How can we provide the assurance throughout the whole of the supply chain, which traditionally has been geared toward months of lead time for people to check and inspect and do all of these things, but now we no longer have that luxury.
No.
So this is where we need our data, our technology to measure and to do that job for us.
You're right. I mean, everybody's looking for immediacy now that things are happening so much quicker. But it also points to the fact that we need more visibility up and down the supply chain.
Absolutely. The better information you have, the more you can optimize.
Yeah. Okay. Looking at the DFM question, I mean, this is something that the industry's been chasing for years. Absolutely years, how to get that information back to the designer so that we're not making the same mistakes and having 5 or 6 turns of a product before it goes into production. How important is it, now that we've got the software tools coming on, to be able to achieve that? Let's start with you again, Dave.
Well, I agree with you, Trevor. The DFM loop and the wall between design and manufacturing, has been in existence as long as manufacturing and design has taken place. However, that wall is getting a little bit shorter and a little bit thinner. As the capabilities of software companies and software products grow, being able to feed that data back to the design is something that we are seeing now. And it's something that is accelerating at a greater pace. And we're also seeing parts of the design phase actually being played out on the manufacturing floor. They're simulating production as they used to and still do simulate the design of a product. So we're kind of seeing a merging of those two worlds as the technology allows them to do those types of things. So the problem that existed 5, 10, 15 years ago is not quite as large of a problem as it was back then, just due to the capabilities that exist in the technologies that are being used today.
Right. Jay, I guess you're in a rather fortunate position that you're part of an organization that's got the different building blocks to help achieve that a bit easier. How is that working?
Yeah, I was just going to jump off what he said. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been able to, with the advent of software and software engineering, model a lot of the manufacturing and the manufacturing capabilities and start moving it upstream a little bit so that designers have access to things that are much closer to reality than what it used to be with this, okay, I've got this, rule set that I need to run arbitrarily and blindly, let's just run it. Now it's getting more intelligent. And I think there's two pieces of the puzzle that are happening. One is we're moving simulation of manufacturing capability, characterization upstream, but we're also merging electronics and mechanical as well, because no one builds just a board. Right. Everyone is building a product. And how those products work together, you need to have some sort of a capability that says, okay, this is the electronics piece, this is the mechanical piece. Now, not only do each one of them have their parallel flows on DFM feedback, but how do those overlap?
Yeah, well,
and
box
what's the
build is a
impact?
right place for automation.
Exactly.
There's got so much potential there. We're getting shorter on time, so I'm going to rush ahead a bit. But here, Joel, if you can just tell me, do you think that manufacturers are sufficiently aware of the potential improvements or they can have in margin, traceability, and quality? Do you think that message is really getting through, and what can we do to get that message through?
Well, it's getting out there, right? But it's an evolutionary process, right? And it's events like this that certainly help promote that. It's the industry talk. It's the push for smart factory and Industry 4.0. There's not too many people we talk to these days that haven't at least heard of this phenomena and know a little bit about what's going on. I was talking with someone this morning, and I think we're still suffering a little bit from the fact that it's still a bit of an unknown, right? You ask 3 different people what their definition of smart factory or Industry 4.0 is, and you get 3 different answers. And there's elements, and I think the best thing that we can do as an industry is to just continue to take small steps quickly, right? Incremental steps, implement, test, go on to the next, right? And I think that's, the proof is in the pudding, then we can actually show these results that we're now being able to provide, and that will certainly get more attention.
So take baby steps, but I mean, Michael, if you look at the Asian companies, especially Chinese, they seem to be very keen to optimize and very quick to optimize. The Europeans, they're getting there, but the US companies seem to be dragging their feet a bit. Have you found this?
Yeah, absolutely. With the work that I've done with IPC, we've had a lot of contact with Chinese companies who really embrace new technology and they just run with it. In fact, sometimes they're just running away into the distance, and I'm wondering, wow, how is that going to happen? How is it going to work? In Europe, it's much more, we have technology, we want to use it, we want to differentiate ourselves, we have a source of information now which is live manufacturing information. We can get great quality from that, we can use it for planning, we can use it to attack counterfeit ingress, and there are so many different uses from the same data. Within the US, I kind of sometimes think that some people have kind of given up. A couple of years ago, it kind of became a situation where we're going to do prototypes, we're going to do the low volume stuff, and everything else is going to go out to China. It's a done deal. We'll do what we have to do, and then we'll move on to the next. And thinking about an opportunity going forward, it just wasn't on the table.
But is it because the Chinese and the Asians have got the volume? And so because they've got the volume, they're going to make the biggest margin, the potential to make the biggest gains in productivity and everything else.
That was the assumption.
And the deep pockets to do it.
It really is the assumption. And, it does take changes in taxes and tariffs and the political situation in the world to make people realize that using smart technology levels the playing field. When you're close to the customer, when you save money on distribution costs, you can invest that into manufacturing and automation and on people. And you can have a business case for manufacturing here in the US at volume of any kind of scale that you like. It can really make sense compared with that in China. If I said that 2 years ago, people think I'm crazy. Nowadays, people think I'm slightly crazy, but people are getting the idea now. It is possible. So we've got to, taking baby steps is fine if you want to be sure you don't make a mistake. But there are those who are really pushing the boat out now. I mean, we make high performance EV cars in the US
Right.
here. It is successful.
Yeah.
It is what people want, and it's where people want it. There are lots of other examples to follow, and people need to be ready for that.
No, you're right. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about Tesla, but yeah, you're right. So anyway, guys, we're running right out of time. I'd love to continue this longer, but for now, I've got to say thank you to Dave Trail from Critical Manufacturing. Thank you. Jay Gorajia from Siemens Mentor.
Thank you.
Joel Scutchfield, of course, from Co-Young, and Michael Ford from Aegis.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and thank you for watching.